This took place around 15 years ago. I would have been about 13 years old. My dad has always taken an annual fishing trip with friends that would put him out of state for about a week. I have numerous stories about weird things happening while he was gone on said fishing trips, from paranormal events to someone attempting to break into our house. But this one is the most unnerving to people when I tell it. When my dad would go on these trips, I would usually sleep in my parents' bed. My mom and I treated it like a little sleepover and would watch movies, stay up late, even on school nights, and gossip. I remember falling asleep after a late night movie and being roused from sleep what felt like just minutes later. My mom is a light sleeper, while on the other hand, it takes a catastrophic level event to wake me up from a dead sleep. I remember waking up feeling as if something was wrong. The room was illuminated oddly, and there was a distant rhythm I was only partially aware of. I'm half asleep, and as I open my eyes, I can see my mom on top of the bed, on her knees, peering out of the window above her bed. I started to ask, "What's going on?" when she turned to me quickly and shhed me. I quietly joined her, looking out the small box window that was slightly cracked open, and the distant rhythmic chanting became more and more clear. Our house sat in front of a strip of woods. The trees aren't too thick, and you can see through most of the wooded area. The chanting was getting louder by the second, and the odd illuminations finally made sense. You could see a line of hooded figures in dark clothes, holding torches, marching east, chanting what sounded like demonic, dark things. It felt surreal and scary as we held our breath, waiting to see what they would do. Were they headed towards the houses to burn them down? Were they going to attempt to break in and sacrifice us? It felt like ages that we sat there, watching this line of people walk through the woods, their torches raised high, and their chanting continuing through the night. But that was it. They just walked away. After what was probably more like 2 minutes, my mom and I laid back down and discussed what we saw, trying to get back to sleep. We told my dad first thing in the morning when he called to check in, but I remember him not believing us. He thought it had to be a dream or something. That kind of thing didn't happen in our small town in Ohio. But the next day, there was an article in the local newspaper about a lamb being slain on a makeshift altar on the east side of town. My dad stopped doubting us, and my mom and I got even more freaked out. My parents still live in that house, and we have never seen any other cult-like behavior in the area. But that one evening freaked us out enough that I decided to permanently camp out in my parents' bedroom every time my dad left town until my late high school years. If you stuck around, I appreciate it. Thanks for reading and allowing me to get this story out there. My friends and I were reminiscing about creepy stories this weekend. This one came up, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since, so I wanted to write it down and share. I was a 16-year-old girl and an avid runner. I ran anywhere from 4 to 10 miles a day. I had a few parks I rotated through and decided one day after school and before work to run at this pretty secluded park next to the river. It was a very hot day, and I knew this park had a lot of shade. I usually carried a knife or pepper spray with me, but forgot it at home and didn't have time to go back home before work. Coming in, I noticed a few moms with their kids at the playground, and what I believed to be one of the children's grandpas watching the kids play. I love kids, so I always enjoy seeing them. Cut to me running my laps. It was getting closer to dinner time, and the families all started to slowly leave. This park was 2 laps per mile, so I was on the second half of mile 3 when I noticed all of the moms and kids were gone. I was a little uncomfortable since I believed I was all alone in this park. Something about when the moms were there comforted me, but now I was alone, so I thought. I'm nearly finished with mile 3 when out of the corner of my eye, I see the grandpa starting to walk the track coming my way. I'm confused since I believed he was with the kids, but all of the kids were gone. I didn't even see another car in the lot besides mine. And to make things even more creepy, he was sucking on a lollipop. Random, but somehow added to the creep factor. My body is telling me to flee, but I'm a stubborn teenager who was determined to run 4 miles that day. I figured I would run past him and be able to move on with my run. I mean, it's not like he could outrun me, right? I'm about 3 steps from him and doing all I can to pretend I don't see him, acting like I'm super focused and can't be bothered. Just as I thought I had made it past him successfully, he somehow grabs the wire of my headphones, no ear pods since this was 2010, and pulls them out of my ears. I turned around at him absolutely livid, but as a woman, I know I have to play nice to try and lessen my chance of being murdered. I look at him, smile, and say, "Are you okay?" He takes a long pause, still sucking on that lollipop, and then pulls it out and shows me this creepy grin that sent shivers down my spine. He looks me up and down and says,
"Like to play alone, huh?"
while grabbing a piece of my blonde hair that was in a ponytail. I smacked his hand off my hair, and I sprinted as fast as I think I ever have back to my car. I had a 1994 Saturn that could only be unlocked manually with a key. So like any horror movie, it takes me a ridiculous amount of attempts to get the key in the hole. All the while, I can hear him walking towards me, slow and steady. Finally, after what seemed like hours, but was most likely only a few seconds, I unlocked my car and jumped in. I locked the door, and soon after, the old man was almost to my car. I start the engine and start to back out of my parking spot. I see the man try to get behind my car, but luckily I was fast enough, and he wasn't able to. I booked it out of the parking lot and didn't look back. I don't know what his plans were. I don't know why he was watching those children play, and I don't know how the hell he kept a lollipop in his mouth so long without it all melting away. I'm so glad I didn't stick around to find out. Fast forward to now, I'm 28 years old, and I have never returned to that park, even though it's the closest park to my house. Hopefully that man is long gone, but I'm not gonna go look and see. This story happened about 6 years ago now, but it still makes me wonder what would have happened if I didn't follow my gut instinct. I've always been very aware of my surroundings. Growing up, my parents and grandparents always instilled my sister and I to be well aware of your surroundings, especially when you're alone, and to follow your gut instinct if you feel like the situation you're in is off. Because of this, I've always left situations I felt a bad vibe from, no matter if things didn't seem too strange to others. Why take the risk? I feel like your body knows what's up, even if you can't see it. So anyways, fast forward to this day. I never finished high school, so I was doing a program at a college in order to get a certificate that was equivalent to a high school diploma in order to get into college. The college I was doing the program at was in the same city as me. However, I didn't have a car, nor drove, so I had to take the bus to and from classes when I had them. Usually the bus ride altogether took about 45 minutes, and I had to transfer onto a second bus at one point. Up until this point, nothing weird or bad ever happened while on my journey to classes. On this particular day, I had finished my classes and was waiting for the first bus to go home. Since my classes weren't regular classes, I usually finished before most of the students in the actual college courses got out. I only had 1 to 2 classes a day, which meant most of the time there weren't too many others waiting for the bus at the same time as me. The bus I was waiting for finally pulls up, and I get on as usual. I go grab a seat at the front of the bus, and I notice that there's absolutely no one else on the bus but me. So I get happy knowing there won't be many stops on my ride home, and therefore I'll get there quicker. About 2 stops later, the bus stops and a male passenger gets on. I think nothing of it at first, and I'm still glad there's only one other person, because it'll still be a quick ride. As the man walks to take a seat on the bus, instead of sitting on the opposite side or the back, he sits right beside me. Not even a seat over. Literally right beside me. Now I'm thinking this is strange, because usually when I get on the bus, if there's plenty of empty seats, I won't pick a seat right next to someone. I usually enjoy sitting by myself, listening to music on the ride, so I decided to get up and go to the back of the bus. While I'm sitting in the back, listening to music, the male passenger keeps staring up at me every few seconds, and it's starting to make me feel uneasy. Up until this point, I didn't really have any alarm bells going off in my head, but the more he kept looking up at me, the more I started to get bad vibes. I eventually started having a really strong gut feeling like I needed to get off of the bus. I can't describe it, but the bad vibes I was getting were making me feel super uneasy. I decided I was going to get off at the next intersection where a stop was, just in case he decided to do anything or follow me. At least I wouldn't be on a side street alone, with no one there. So the next intersection stop is coming up, and I press the button on the bus to be let off. As the bus is about to pull over and stop, I get up to walk to the door, and I notice the male passenger get up too. I think that's really weird. I decided to get off the front of the bus, by the driver, versus the back, and the male passenger gets off with me. At this point, I'm freaked out, and I walk ahead a bit and notice he follows me. The bus is at a red light at the stop, and the doors are still opened, so I decide to go back onto the bus, thinking this man won't follow me. Wrong. He follows me back onto the bus. At this point, I'm really freaked out, and the bus driver closes the doors to drive away. I immediately say, "Sorry, I gotta get off at this stop," and he opens them again, and I notice the male passenger is again about to get off with me. Thankfully, the bus driver closes the doors and drove off. I don't know if he knew the man was following me and decided to not let him off, or if he just wanted to drive away. But as the bus pulled away, I noticed the man who followed me standing at the front of the bus, staring at me. At this point, I'm glad he's away from me, because I decided not to wait for the next bus, because I didn't know if this man was going to get off at the next stop and come walk back to the stop I was at and see me. I ended up calling my mom to come pick me up. I'm glad my gut instinct knew something was up, and I got off the bus before he followed me all the way home, because I live on a side street that's about a 7-minute walk from the bus stop, so who knows what would have happened. So sketchy man on the bus, let's not meet again.